Today I'm going to be showing you how to fit a Flettner 2000 air vent with an extender. So my current build of the Mark IV ex-British Gas Caddy Maxi, which I'm converting into a micro camper, I really wanted to fit an air vent. So I did lots of research and I've discovered that Flettner seems to be the market leaders in ventilation for air vents to go on your van. They've got loads of different air vents on their website, but this is the Flettner 2000. So I reached out to the guys at Flettner and they have very kindly sent me a Flettner 2000 and also the extender. And I'm going to need the extender, as you can see above me, because I've got the insulation and cladding. So I need that little extender there just to bridge the gap in the length there. They have also sent me a Flettner floor vent as well, so I can cut a hole into the floor and put this in, so I'll have a full circulation of airflow, which will really reduce condensation and give me all the benefits from the Flettner products. So how is this going to work? So you've got the top piece here. This is going to go on the outside of the van on the roof, and then you have the extender, which is going to go above my head into this panel here. So the extender goes up there, and then you also have a base plate. So the extender goes in there like that, and then you've got this base plate that goes on the bottom. So that all sits on like there, the cladding touching up to it, which will look really nice and tidy. Then it will generate the airflow through the vent. So you can see that's where I need the extender, because it's the perfect height to bridge the gap between the cladding, the insulation, and the roof of the van. See, I've got the hole that's already sealed up, so that's the original hole from the original vent. I'm going to cut all this out and then put the new vent in there. So why should you get a Flettner vent, and why are they so good? So if you're sleeping in the van, they not only reduce condensation, but they also remove excess heat in the summer. So along with removing excess heat, they also remove stale odours and fumes. So there's no more smelly shoes. Fresh as a daisy. Another bonus, there's no running costs, so you can keep that £5 for a pint. Mind you, it'll probably be £6 soon. So that's why the vents are so good. Even if you're using them commercially, if you've got materials in the back of the vans, it's going to get rid of all the stale odours and keep them nice and cool. But if you're like us and you're doing lots of adventures, you're going surfing, hiking, mountain biking, and all your equipment's going to get wet and it's going to start smelling, it gets rid of all of that. It gets rid of the condensation and it gets rid of the smells. And even if you've got dogs, they're brilliant as well, because obviously it's going to get rid of all the stale odours. Nobody likes the smell of a wet dog. But let's crack on and get it fitted. So to fit a Flettner vent, you're going to need some PPE such as goggles and gloves. You'll need a marker pen so you can mark on the van where you're going to cut out the hole. You'll then need a drill and a hole saw attachment to cut the hole. I don't have a hole saw attachment because I already have a hole on the van, so I don't need to do that. You're then going to need some rust resistant paint. So I've got some Hammerite here, which is blue, so it's going to match in. So that's going to protect the van once you've cut the hole. You'll then need a file as well, just to smooth off any of the rough edges. You need a flathead screwdriver just to unscrew some of the bolts and the top caps. You're then also going to need some strong adhesive sealant. I've gone for Sikaflex 221, I think that's how you pronounce it. I've gone for this because it's recommended in all the forums online and it's UV protected, so it should last forever on top of the van, and it should be a really good sealant on that one. So if you guys are fitting the extender like I am, you're going to need some longer bolts. So I've gone for these stainless steel M4 bolts, which is 75mm long. I've got these off Amazon, so I'll put the link in the video description. So guys, before you get started, you've got to make sure you've got everything in the box that should be there. So you've got the vent itself, and on the back of the vent you've also got the foam gasket. You then should have 4 bolts, 4 nuts and 4 washers. I've also bought the extra long bolts just because I've got the extender. So talking about the extender, here is the extender, should have that as well. Should have an instructional manual which has got all the instructions in there, and you can use this to cut your hole in the roof. And then you've got the base plate that goes inside the van on the ceiling, which is underneath, and it's got the shutter on the bottom, and the shutter just pops off like so. So step 1 to fit the Flettner air vent. So get the vent and prise the grey disc from the top of the rotor using a small screwdriver. Underneath this will be a couple of locking nuts on the main spindle. Remove the locking nut using a 1/2 inch or 13mm socket spanner or socket wrench, or some call it a box spanner. Hold the rotor and unscrew the second nut using a flat-headed screwdriver inserted into the slot at the top of the spindle. Turn the screwdriver clockwise to release the nut. So step 2 is going to be cutting a hole in your van's roof. I don't have to do this as the van already has a hole in the roof from when it was made at factory. If you need to cut a hole in your roof, check out Flettner's video on their YouTube channel, which is amazing, or follow the instructions in the booklet. So for my van, it was then time to prep the roof. I had to cut out the old seal using a Stanley knife to cut through the silicone and undo the screws, prying it off through the old silicone. When I got underneath it, I actually realised it was not fitted that well. There's quite a bit of rust on the roof, so I had to really clean this off. So I used a Stanley knife to get all the silicone off. I then wiped the area down, made sure it was nice and dry, and then I used the Hammerite to reprime it. So once I'd prepped the top of the roof, I then had to prep the ceiling inside. Again, I then used the Hammerite to paint the underneath of the ceiling to ensure that all the metalwork would be protected. Before you head on to step 3 to fit the vent, make sure that if you're using an extender, you've got the correct bolts. So I've gone for these stainless steel M4 bolts, which is 75mm long. I've got these off Amazon, so I'll put the link in the video description. Once you've got the bolts, then measure how long you're going to need them and cut them down if needed. So the next step is to fit the ventilator. To do this, you're going to begin with fitting the base. So using the sealant, fit the foam gasket to the bottom of the base. Once you've done this, add more sealant to the foam gasket which is making contact with the roof on the outside of the van. I would add plenty of sealant at this stage. Once the gasket is in place the base onto the roof and push the 4 bolts down through the fixing holes. So the extender is going to go against the ceiling like a top hat, just like that. So when you're screwing in the bolts from the outside to the inside, you'll probably need an assistant, like my good friend on the roof, and they need to have style, like an orange jumpsuit. Anyway, what you need to do is have one person with a screwdriver holding the bolts from the top and the other person's socket wrench screwing them in. So you ready? Let's go from my left, your right.
Ready.
Next one.
Yeah, good. Go on, hurry up.
Tighten the base into position using the nuts and washers provided. The next step is to put the vent on the base. So to do this, you need to place the rotor onto the shaft and secure it with both nuts. This is pretty easy to do and it just slides on through the holes. You then want to get the 2 nuts and then put these back onto the spindle. So grab one of the nuts and hand thread it onto the spindle clockwise and then gently tighten it into position by turning the spindle anti-clockwise with a screwdriver. So as you're turning the spindle anti-clockwise with a screwdriver, it pulls it all together and that bottom nut will sit within the hexagonal recess. At this point, do not over tighten it, but once it's sitting in there, it's pretty easy to see how tight to go. So then you want to grab the second nut, aka the locking nut, and tighten in position clockwise using a 13mm socket spanner. The final step is to get the grey disc and press it onto the vent. Make sure you press this down firmly to ensure it's all watertight. If you fitted the ventilator correctly, the rotors should spin freely and there should be no vertical play.
God, that looks so good.
So guys, once you've finished off the roof and you've got all the cladding in place, the last thing to do is attach the support ring and the shutter. So I'm just going to attach the support ring now. So as I've got the bolts coming through here, I can attach the support ring to these bolts. That should just pop on like so. And then the final thing is to add the shutter. So it goes out as a shutter and then you can open and close it. So if you're sleeping at night, you might want it shut. In the morning, you might want it open.
So I hope that was really easy to follow along, guys. If you've got any questions or anything at all, you want me to do any other videos, just let me know in the comments below. I've had this vent for about 2 weeks now, and I can say, look, coming after a really hot day like today, the van's actually really cool because the vent's been working, and driving along, you know, when you let a little bit of a smell out, it just gets sucked out the van. So it's really, really good, and I'd really recommend getting one, especially if you're doing adventures, you're mountain biking, surfing, kayaking, anything that's going to get wet, make condensation in the van, especially if you're going to sleep in the van. Like, it's absolutely perfect, and I'll do another review in a couple months' time to see how we're getting on with it. Like always, hit that subscribe button, like the video, and share it with your friends.